Hey guys, welcome into Sports Around the Bar, your weekly sports talk show. As always, I am Jake, your bartender, and as you can tell, I'm all you got today. We're glad you made it in, guys. TGIF. It's going to be a great show. We got a lot going on today. Some football news out there. We got the Eagles signing Jonathan Cyprien. Melvin Gordon on his way out, supposedly. I don't know. The Chargers are trying to have something to say about that. And we're also going to talk about the Patriots picking up Cam Meredith and the Bills 2019. Nathan, man, good to see you. We're glad to see everybody in here. We've got a lot going on. Glad you made it to the weekend. We're going to get right into it. So, as you can tell, I'm by myself, so you're going to have to cut me a little bit of slack when it comes to the comments. I'm going to try to get to everything important. But if I do miss you, again, I do apologize for that right now. Drew is on his way out to a party or something like that. I didn't ask. Don't ask, don't tell. Who knows what he's up to right now. But hopefully he'll be back on Monday. For now, we'll get right into things. And we're going to start by talking about Jonathan Cyprien. This is, to me, I don't want to call it the biggest story out there today, but it is an important one, especially for Eagle fans. I think when you look at Jonathan Cyprien coming off this ACL tear, formerly from the Tennessee Titans and Jacksonville Jaguars, he is a safety that, I don't know if you heard that, hopefully the thunder doesn't interrupt our show too much, hopefully the internet sticks with us. He's a safety that should be able to help the Eagles out on the back end of this secondary. I think it's going to be great. I think him moving in there helps this team out, especially losing someone like Jordan Hicks off to the Cardinals. They were had a bit of question marks at the linebacker position. And I think when you look at them adding a run-stopping safety, a guy that's going to be able to come up to the line, lay the smack down, support the run, I think this is a perfect addition. He's a linebacker without being a linebacker. I think he also has the versatility to cover a little bit. He's not the best coverage safety, but still, the Eagles needed help in the back end of that secondary. They needed another tackler behind this defensive line. I think this is a great move. Louis, man, good to see you too. Again, just me today, but we're glad everybody's in here. We won't dwell on the Cyprien thing. This is a low-risk, high-reward kind of signing from the Eagles. We're also going to talk about another one, and I kind of want to get your guys' opinion here and decide which one of these is actually better. Which team here did better signing a low-risk guy that they haven't married themselves to? They could wash him out before week one, and it's no kind of harm to the team, because between Jonathan Cyprien going to the Eagles and Cameron Meredith going to the Patriots, it seems like the rich have only gotten richer in the NFL. They're only adding more pieces to these teams that, even if neither one of these guys turns into a stud, if they can get you a little bit of production out of them, it's worth the signing. They're veterans. They've been around the league. I think Cyprien's 27 or 28 and Cam Meredith is 26, so they still have some upside if things work out with these guys. You know, if one of them has a light-up year, they could wind up with a larger contract. I think this is one of those moves, or both of these moves actually, are great, and these are why good teams stay good, because they're willing to take chances towards the bottom half of their roster. Now, Louis also says they need a guy in the backfield. They've always had a solid front, and I think that's what Cyprien is going to give the Eagles. He's going to give them that kind of, not necessarily linebacker-esque, but he's going to be a box safety. He's a guy who's going to rush forward and help defend the run a lot more than anything else. I think when you look at Jonathan Cyprien and what he can bring to this team, they needed help behind that great defensive front they had even last year, even now with Hicks gone, arguably their best linebacker from last year. This is going to help fill the void. Is it going to be an even trade? No, but there's a reason Jonathan Hicks was as sought after. Jordan Hicks, my apologies, was as sought after as he was. There's a reason that teams wanted to scoop him up, and there's a reason he got that contract from the Cardinals. I think when you look at things, the Eagles have gotten better making this move. I think the Patriots, maybe not as good signing him. It's not as sure of a thing. If you get 2016 Cam Meredith back, of course they're looking much better. We can't forget, going back to the Patriots and the way they kind of treat a lot of veteran guys, they are more than happy to take a productive guy that's kind of had a falling out with some of his other teams and just see if he works. They put him on a one-year deal, not atypical at all. We see the Patriots do this all the time. I think Cam Meredith represents the best of the low floor but high ceiling signings that you can see in the NFL. Again, in 16, the guy looked like a number one wide receiver. We were surprised after his injury in 17 that the Bears were so ready to move on to him, and even the Saints, who signed him in 18 after the Bears didn't want him, were more than willing to let him walk, with them still having a lot of questions in their receiving room as well. Let me go to a couple of these comments here really quick. Ian says the Patriots always find a way to make those type of players fit in their systems. I'm with him. You're 100% right. They always find a way to make it work with some of these guys. It doesn't matter what they've done in the past. It doesn't matter how productive they've been. roll the dice on a lot of these guys. They say, is he going to work? Is he going to fit in our system? Is he going to play football the Patriot way? And if he's not, he's right out the door and it's on to the next guy. I think that's a likely scenario with Cam Meredith. While the Eagles, I think, regardless, are going to hang on to Jonathan Cyprien. He's going to be one of those guys that even if you don't see him a lot, he's going to be a depth safety for them that's going to provide some value. I don't know that Cam Meredith is that guy. We know the Patriots are thin at receivers. We know Tom Brady needs more weapons at wide out, at tight end, any kind of pass catcher outside of the running back position they need to get deeper at. I just don't know that Cam Meredith is that guy. I mean, again, in 16 with the Bears, he looked like a number one wide receiver. He was like a breakout player. He got hurt in the preseason of 2017. And after that, the Bears were like, man, we don't need you. And let's not pretend, this is before they signed Allen Robinson. They still needed receivers. They just said, we don't need you. Regardless of what you've done in the past, you're not helping this team out. I think this is a big move for the Patriots, or for Cam Meredith even, to get another chance like this, because there's a good chance that could have been it. The Saints were the quintessential team that needed depth at receiver. He got his second chance there. This is almost a third chance, and we don't always see that a lot in the NFL. Could have you wound up on one of the bottom tier teams and not seen a lot of usage? I mean, it could have been a Ravens receiver, and that's not a shot at the Ravens. It's just more of an observation saying they're not as good at wide receiver. With him on his way out the door, for him to get an opportunity with a contender, it surprised me a little bit, but less so because it's the Patriots, and they love to turn and burn on a lot of these veterans. Sticking with the comments here, Nathan says Cam Meredith will be good for the Pats. I think he's got potential. I think if he can get on page with them, I think, yeah, he could be one of those guys that might be their number 2 receiver behind Julian Edelman this year. He might be able to provide that kind of, I don't want to call it a number 1-esque where he plays the sideline, but he's going to provide versatility to this passing game that they were missing last year. And I know he's going to be competing with N'Keal Harry, their rookie they spent a first-round pick on, but again, rookie receivers, once in a while we see flashes where they come out of college and take the game over. More often than not, it's a growth position. I think the Patriots will be looking to the veteran before they look to pile everything on the rookie, but I think the best man plays, and I don't know that Cam Meredith is going to be the guy that's going to step up and go fight for a spot. Again, he could have fought for a spot for the Saints, and I know he got hurt there too, but even when he was healthy, they weren't really using him a whole lot. They didn't really seem to need Cameron Meredith or want him on the field. Even more than need, it was they didn't want him around. And when you don't want a guy like that, that can be a pretty big issue for a guy that 2 years ago looked like a stud. Let's look at a couple more of these comments here before we move on. Scott says the Pats use their talent better, it seems like. I think that's part of it, but I think also when you take that many gambles, sometimes they just pay off. I mean, they sign guys like Kenny Britt and, a bunch of other guys that they sign real on the down low. Nobody's talking about these signings. And then they see if they can get something out of them. It doesn't always work out, but when you swing the bat all the time, eventually you're going to hit the ball, right? I think that's kind of what the Patriots do, and I think that's what makes them as good of a franchise as they are, is they don't really care. It doesn't matter. They will bring anybody in, give them a tryout if they think that could make them a better football team. I think a lot of teams saw this Cam Meredith cut, and they probably weren't even considering him, saying, oh, he might be an attitude problem, he might be this. The Patriots bring him in, and then if he is the attitude problem, say, all right, there's the door, now it's time for you to leave. Not everybody does that. Now, Andrew, on the road, good to see you, says he just has to stay healthy. I think health is a part of it, but I think more than that, a lot of it's attitude, because if it was just health, for as little as he was costing the Saints, I think they would have rolled the dice and kept him around this year. Again, they're going to be thinner at receiver too. They needed that number 2 guy to Michael Thomas, and even though I believe Traquan Smith, rookie from last year, I think he was a 3rd-round pick, that stepped up last year and looked good at times, probably isn't ready for that role yet. He's probably still a 3rd receiver. If Cameron Meredith had any kind of support left to him, I think the Saints would have had every opportunity to keep him around. Instead, I think it's an attitude thing. Same thing with the Bears. Just because he tore an ACL, he never really got the chance to play again. I think the Bears, going all the way back to 17, or the season of 17, said, we don't want this guy around. That's pretty tough to overcome when you're a veteran in the league and you haven't exactly lit it up in the past 2 or 3 years. So he's got a lot of questions to answer. Health is definitely part of it, but I can't say that's all there is to it. I think Cam Meredith is one of the more interesting players to follow at the bottom end of rosters this year. A couple more here. Nathan's asked, why is nobody considering Dez Bryant? I heard Dez Bryant might be thinking about hanging things up. After the injury last year, in the first practice with the Saints, I think he's kind of starting to question if it's worth it or not. He's not the type of guy that wants to come back and go play for a low-end salary. I think he thought last year, I'll play with the Saints, I'll put up big numbers, and then someone's going to give me a big contract. I've read a couple articles saying that, he's considering retiring, and he just doesn't know that he has the same kind of fire that he used to. Andrew also says Dez will again be a late pickup for the year again. His injury scares teams. That could be it. I think when you have the injury and you stack it on top with, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, most teams do not want to keep that guy around the locker room. They don't want to keep that guy in there talking to my, $25, $30 million quarterback, bringing him down or anything like that, or talking in that receiver room to the younger guys saying, man, I feel like I've been cheated at times. I feel like I'm not being used enough, or I'm better than you guys. I need to be out there. I'm not saying Dez Bryant is as big of an attitude problem as the media wants to portray him as, but I think anytime a guy's thinking about hanging it up, that's a danger to a locker room. You want those rah-rah guys that are going to pump everybody up and keep everybody on track. If you lose the locker room, we can see good teams become average and average teams become bad. So I think that might be part of it too with Dez Bryant. You might be right. There might be a team that's hungry enough towards the beginning of the season that says, doesn't matter, we need a receiver. It's got to be Dez Bryant because he's the best one out there. I thought he was going to be picked up in free agency, but again, he's one of those guys that just kind of flew under the radar. Teams are willing to bet more on what we think he is now than can we get something out of him like we used to see. Sharif also says Michael Crabtree is still available. I think that's a guy that probably lands a job before we see Dez Bryant do it. Even though we saw his usage kind of take a tick back this past year with the Ravens especially, but even before that with the Raiders, I still think he's one of those guys that someone will eventually get injured enough, like maybe the Giants are considering him, that they're going to go reach out and say, what the heck, let's bring him in. He's another guy, though, maybe like Dez Bryant, that might be considering hanging things up, and his usage isn't where it used to be. Maybe he wants to be higher in the depth chart than he probably is going to be at this point in his career. You got to think about these things if you're a GM. Do I want to move an attitude problem, or do I want to allow an attitude problem to move in? I don't know. I think they really need to consider it before they make the move. Ian says he can see him as the Pats' number 3 wide receiver, going back to Cameron Meredith. 3 touchdowns this year. Could be, or maybe he's the breakout guy. Maybe everyone's paying attention to Edelman, and they put Cam Meredith out there. He's healthy, and we see him just absolutely light things up. I don't think so. I don't think he's that guy that... I don't know that he has that left in the tank. I don't know. 2016 might have been more of an, just a one-and-done kind of year. I don't know that he's necessarily going to have that anywhere near that production, but it's the Patriots, man. You can never give up on anybody. Scott says, with that staff and the QB, the wide receivers only need to be average at best. And my question is, can Cameron Meredith get back to average? Because we've seen him be well below it for years now. I think, yes, injury has slowed him down for sure, but some guys don't come back from those injuries. I think Cameron Meredith, again, high ceiling. He could, if you get anywhere near 2016, this is a great move. If you don't, you throw him out and you keep rolling because you're the Patriots, and that's usually the way things go. Awesome. I'm glad you can still hear me. I'm not sure why we cut out. Let me check a couple things here. All right. I'm glad you can still hear me. We will keep talking about some of these other moves. I want to talk about Melvin Gordon before we talk about the Bills, because when you look at a number 1 running back, and I'm back. All right. When you look at a number 1 running back like Melvin Gordon, we don't always see him take this big step and say, I want to trade going into free agency. Teams usually don't let it get that far, right? But now we've got Zeke up there. We have Melvin Gordon up there. Both guys, high caliber running backs that somebody's going to offer a lot of money to bring in, more than likely, that are on the market. The question to me is, do the Chargers need to just bite the bullet and trade him? That's the most interesting thing with the Melvin Gordon thing is, can you convince this guy to give you at least one more year? Even if he walks, if you get that one more year where potentially you could go win the Super Bowl, maybe you keep him. Maybe you say, we'll go bet on Austin Eckler or whoever else we bring in. Maybe we try to go with that dime a dozen, mantra of we'll just bring in another guy and try to work on our offensive line, have a good running back there. Or do you trade him? I don't know. I think the trade is the worst scenario here. Yes, you want something out of him, and normally I'm the guy that says trade somebody before you let them walk. But when you're a team like the Chargers, the complete team in the NFL, right? The team that's everyone's looking at saying they can win a Super Bowl, even though I'm not convinced. I think losing a top-tier guy due to attitude and complaining about things just helps derail a team. I know people are going to point to the Steelers and say Le'Veon Bell and look at the way they looked without him. That's true, but how many games did the Steelers win last year? They didn't get close enough. Even though James Conner looked good for stretches, even though Austin Eckler probably can look good for stretches with this team, can you win a Super Bowl without your star running back? And when a team's built like the Chargers are, I'm going to say potentially. They're still the better team and the better defense than the Steelers were last year, but I think a lot of this offense runs through Melvin Gordon and a lot of pressure coming off of Phillip Rivers to constantly throw the ball, to throw 5,000 yards every year. You take that pressure off of Phillip Rivers, that might be the best version of this Chargers offense that we're going to see. All right, we'll move forward here. Sharif says that the rookie the Pats drafted will do fine. Sure, yeah, I think N'Keal Harry will be just fine. I like him coming out of college. It's the Patriots. Obviously, they believe in a guy if they're going to take a receiver in the first round. But I don't think good teams bet on first-round wide receivers saving a franchise and just bring them in. I don't think they're going to bet on N'Keal Harry just being, an Odell Beckham-like talent coming in and dominating from his first year. I think they're willing to say, if we get 600 or 700 yards out of Harry this year and we see growth, that's perfectly fine. We'll go get another piece that we can go and work into our offense. We're not going to try to force the ball to the rookie. I'm with you. I think he'll be fine. I still like the pick. The question to me is, does it stay that way down the line? And how much usage do the Patriots keep N'Keal Harry getting? Do they try to focus on N'Keal Harry for the entire first season of his career? Do they focus on getting him the ball, or do they just let things kind of develop? I think the Patriots just let things develop. A couple more comments here. Ian says that's because the Steelers had no time to prepare for that. If they had time, they would have been in a much better position like they would be this year. The Chargers haven't had a lot of time to prepare for it, right? This is only a couple-week-old story that Melvin Gordon says, I want a new contract or trade me. Reportedly, he wants more than $10 million a year, which is a ton of money to guarantee a running back. The Chargers are very much in the same kind of scenario as the Steelers were, where you don't have time to prepare for it. Could they trade him now, and would they be okay? Yeah, I think it'd be kind of like the Steelers, where they've got a guy in Austin Eckler that's probably going to give you 8 or 9 really good games, and we're going to see some flashes and say maybe this kid can do it. If they have another guy step up and you get 8 games out of each of them, they can make it happen. Does that happen? I wouldn't want to bet on it. If this is my Super Bowl run, I wouldn't want to lose my star running back like Chicago and Jordan Howard. I wouldn't want to subtract at this point unless the guy is just that bad of an attitude problem that there's nothing you can do. If this is the only option, then you have to do it. All right, Sharif also said the last 3 Super Bowls the champs had running backs by committee. I agree. That has happened. But you know what else they had? A better team than what I think the Chargers have. Even though they have the big names, even though they have, the edge rushers that are good, they're also signing guys like Thomas Davis, that even though he was a great player, at this point in his career probably is not as good as he was. Even though Derwin James has looked good, they have a team of great players. They just don't have a great team. And I think that's why they struggle with teams like the 49ers and teams like Cincinnati. It's because regardless of the names on the team, you need to have a good team. They still kind of lack in the offensive line, even though Melvin Gordon, I think, really helped them out in the running game, despite missing some yards or some games last year. I think this team needs to add more consistent and more mid-range players to move into that final, we're a top 2, top 3, top 4 playoff contender. Before they're the Saints, before they're the Rams, before they're the Chiefs, before they're the Patriots, before they're one of these caliber teams, they need to add a couple more mid-range players to this roster. Couple more comments, and then I promise we'll move on. Sharif says, also, the losers in the Super Bowl were a running back by committee. By that point, yes, but only because of injury. Let's not pretend like the Rams wouldn't have run Todd Gurley 38 times if they had the opportunity to. Now, WrestleZone also said, trade him to Miami. That's an interesting move. Do you trade him in conference to a team like Miami that seems to be far away from the playoffs, or do you try to spring for an NFC team? I think Miami would be fine. I think that's a good landing spot for him. I think Miami would probably jump at the opportunity to add that big of a name, but you never know. I mean, Miami's kind of been that team that's been reluctant to pay a lot of guys or pay certain guys coming out of skill positions and everything. They've tried to go with a cheaper route of having guys that they believe in, but maybe they don't believe in paying them a lot of money. It would definitely be a change of pace for the Dolphins to go out and say, we'll go give Melvin Gordon a $12 million a year contract or more at the drop of the hat, plus give up draft picks. I think they're much more likely to stay a little more conservative and let that trade happen somewhere else. I think the best trade I've heard, realistically, would be Green Bay. Green Bay spent big on their defense. I don't know that they're going to have the money to offer Melvin Gordon, but potentially this could give them that star running back to pair up with Aaron Rodgers and take a little bit of that pressure off of him finally. Is he going to be okay with that? Who knows? I like Aaron Jones. I think Jamal Williams for them is still okay, but when you look at things, I think the Patriots, if you can add another star to that offense, and all of a sudden it's not all about Devontae Adams and what he can do, this could be a scary team. This could be the team that could finally challenge the Bears. Do I think they beat the Bears? I don't think they're there yet. I don't think they have the defense for that yet, but I think that is if I'm the Green Bay, I'm at least on the phone asking, hey, what's it going to take? Can I get a second or a third round pick, send it off for Melvin Gordon, and then work some kind of deal with him where we offer him 10 early on or later on, or we find a way to make the financials work to keep him around long term. Finally, Sharif says Eckler is not a 20-plus carry a guy, though. I agree with you. He's not a 20-plus carry a game guy. He's one of those guys that you want to touch the ball 12 to 15 times at most. He's going to catch the ball a lot. He's one of those guys that if you can focus on using him as a number 2, or at the very least starting the game with him and then having another power back that can go eat some carries for him, he's perfect. I think that's what you want for him. Jeremy, man, good to see you. Also, Sharif says, it's so weird that Andrew Chapman is, it's so weird that Uncle Andrew Chapman, I'm doing awesome. Appreciate that, guys. Again, always easier when I can stop, take a nice sip of beer, have somebody to kick it to, but today, we're just going to keep chugging on. We'll start by talking about the Bills next. I know, not the sexiest team, right? But sexy doesn't always win in the NFL. Usually when you're the teams like the Buffalo Bills and you put together a great defense and you put together a running game, you can have success. I mean, a lot of teams have kind of started to follow that kind of ideology that I don't necessarily need to have the best quarterback on the field to win games. We've seen teams like Denver with Peyton Manning win with the defense and a running game. And yes, I get it, they had Peyton Manning, but Peyton Manning could barely throw by that point. They were talking about replacing him with Brock Osweiler. So yeah, things were desperate at quarterback. We've seen teams like Seattle focus on building the running game and the defense. Do I think Russell Wilson kind of is that outlier where he's a great quarterback too? Yeah, that helped. It definitely did. But we've also seen teams like Carolina get there. We've seen other teams like Atlanta focus on building the defense. The Bills, to me, are that team that if they can manage to stop shooting themselves in the foot, if they could go get a quarterback that's somewhere closer to 10 to 12 to 15 in the NFL, they could win a Super Bowl. And I know you're going to say I'm crazy. And it's interesting to look at because this defense rated as second in the NFL last year. This was the second best defense, at least when it comes to yardage, and the best pass defense. This team is very good at stopping other teams that want to throw the ball. And as we move farther and farther along in time, it seems like teams want to lean towards that spread offense, throw the ball all the time. So when you can be the best at stopping that, you can win games. You can get things done. What's held back Buffalo forever? They haven't had the quarterback. Even going back to when they had guys like Tyrod Taylor, they had guys that just could not get it done. I mean, guys like J.P. Losman, the kid out of Florida State they drafted, E.J. Manuel. They've spent on these guys that have not panned out. They have not, in the slightest, been remotely close to what they need. If they had, a mid-range quarterback, we're talking about a playoff team. At the very least, year in and year out. The way they run, they have Shady McCoy. They've had good running backs before that. They've had, a great offensive line. They've had a great defense. They've been lacking at receiver. I get it. Sammy Watkins had one good year with them, but they've been missing those receivers. So what did they go out and do this offseason? Let's talk about that. They added pretty much every offensive lineman and every wide receiver that they could find out there in free agency. I'm going to run through the list here. Bear with me. For wide receiver, they added Cole Beasley. They added John Brown. They added Tyler Kroft, not a receiver, but a pass catcher at tight end. They also added Andre Roberts. So they brought in 4 wide receivers, all in free agency. They spent huge on this offensive line. They brought in Mitch Morris from the Chiefs. They paid Cole Beasley $29 million. They spent $44 on Mitch Morris. They spent $27 on John Brown. They spent $18 on Tyler Kroft. They have gone all in to buy their way back into the playoff conversation because maybe they see that window starting to open with Tom Brady maybe getting a little bit older and starting to slow down soon. They've also brought in Spencer Long as center, Ty Nsekhe right tackle, John Feliciano offensive guard. They brought in Quentin Spain offensive guard. They brought in 6 offensive linemen. They have spent huge on this offensive line because I still think they believe in running the ball. They want to protect Josh Allen. They want to keep the hits off him. And they want to see if this kid can develop into the passer that eventually will get this team into the playoffs. Can they get the job done? I don't know. Watching Josh Allen last year, yeah, he made some great plays with his legs. He kept them in games with his playmaking ability and his ability to scramble and make things happen. But there were a lot of games he was putting up like 85 yards, 120 yards, 114 yards. I need to see more. I get it. He's got a strong arm. Teams fall in love with the strong arm quarterbacks, but accuracy is still king in the NFL, and that is the hardest part of your game to build once you finally get to the pros. I just don't know that Josh Allen winds up being the guy. And even though he won more games than Sam Darnold, I still put him way behind him and Baker Mayfield. I mean, the gap at quarterback from the rookie class last year is Baker Mayfield out in front, Sam Darnold a ways behind him, and then you've got a long distance before you talk about Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, and Lamar Jackson, because all 3 of those guys, we have not seen the consistency throwing. And in the NFL, you're going to need to throw at least a little bit if you're going to be successful. I think they have excuses. They have, he wasn't protected as well. That's why they went and brought in all these offensive linemen. He didn't have the guys to throw to. That's why they threw all this money at John Brown and Cole Beasley. I get that. But at the end of the day, great quarterbacks find a way to make things work with the guys they have. I don't think the Bills had a great receiving corps. They might have been one of the worst in football. You still find a way to make things happen. We never saw quite the same number of plays that we saw out of Sam Darnold where it was just close. It was, that was a great run play. It was a great idea. It just didn't quite work out. We never really saw that. It was always things break down, can't find anybody. Josh Allen takes off. Josh Allen makes something happen with his legs. Josh Allen puts his shoulder down and gets through a guy to get a first down or a touchdown or whatever the team needs. We just have not seen that out of Josh Allen yet. That's what year 2 is about for him. I don't think the Bills are going to be a massively successful team. I'll go out there and say that right now. I think they have what it takes to give teams trouble. I don't know that they have what it takes to beat the great teams. I don't think they're going to be consistent enough to beat the average teams, but I think they might surprise the good teams sometimes. They're going to go into some of these games, play really good defense for that. You're going to see Josh Allen maybe make the throws you want to see him make. You're going to see him definitely make stuff happen with his legs. They keep the scores close, and they find a way to steal some of these wins. I think the best thing the Buffalo Bills for 2019 can see is a little bit of progression with Josh Allen in the passing game. Because then you can go spend a pick on another top wide receiver, try to develop him, and then turn this offense eventually into one that can throw as well as run. If you can do that, and you can become the Cowboys. That's what this team is. It's the Cowboys that can't throw. And we saw the Cowboys kind of struggle all last year before they brought in Amari Cooper in the same kind of scenario where they could not throw the ball at all. They struggled to move the ball through the air. Teams cheated up on them, just like they did with Buffalo, and then you wind up not winning games. As soon as they brought in Amari Cooper and they could spread things out, we saw them take that big step forward to now we're talking about them being a potential Super Bowl contender. At the very least, playoffs, right? You can not like the Cowboys, but you have to tell me that they are setting themselves up. Let me go with a couple of these comments here as well. Sharif says the Bills will be a dangerous team, especially in the second half of the season, so watch out. I agree. They're that team nobody wants to play. They're going to come play smash-mouth football, beat up your offensive line, beat up your offense with that defense they've got, and then they're going to run the rock on you. I think Shady McCoy is going to be an interesting study, but I think with them bringing in a guy like TJ Yeldon that has not had success in Jacksonville, but is still one of those running backs that probably has a little bit of potential and is going to be running in a pretty run-heavy team. They have him, and then they also have Devin Singletary they drafted that are going to maybe make up and keep Shady healthier because he doesn't need to carry the ball 25 to 30 times a game. All right. We'll move forward here. Also, Ian says, alone or together, you're better than 9/10 of the sports show out there talking about me or with Drew. We appreciate that, Ian. We're always glad to talk with you guys. It's always great to get your opinions, too. So I appreciate each and every one of you guys sticking with me in the comments. It's been fun. We'll get into the Bills here in just a sec, but I want to hit a couple more of these comments. Sharif also says, but Allen ran a lot and scored with his legs. And he disagrees with me, I think, talking about the rookie quarterbacks. I'll give you this, Sharif. They've had success. We saw the running quarterbacks have a little bit of success when they had elite defenses. We're talking about top 3 defenses for both of those guys. Both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson had top 3 defenses. Even though Buffalo couldn't keep people off the scoreboard, they definitely didn't let them move the ball along the ground or through the air, really. Both of these guys, if you put an elite defense out there, you can win a few games, but is that going to be good enough to get anywhere? No, we saw the great teams wind up taking care of them. The Chargers, the Ravens beat them once. They did. And then the Chargers kind of figured out how you put enough speed on the field, you can slow down that running quarterback, things kind of fall apart. I think if these teams are going to take that next step forward, having just a defense and a quarterback that's only going to run isn't enough. I think you have to be able to throw a little bit in today's game if you're going to win. That's coming from a Titans fan, man. I know what that's like. You have to throw a little bit if you're going to wind up competing with these teams that can throw a lot, no matter what kind of defense you put on the field, because those teams, Kansas City, New England, Green Bay even, all these teams that are going to go spread the ball out and spread out the defense, they're eventually going to go put 20 points on the board, 22 points, and you're going to have to be able to keep up with that. We'll move forward here. Ian says Josh Allen will have a better season than Lamar Jackson. I think it's too early to tell. I like Josh Allen having a couple of veterans instead of the Ravens kind of reaching out and going and get high draft picks. I like those guys growing together. 19, I'd say it's probably a safe bet saying Allen will have some more success because he's got more experience in his wide receiver room right now than I think Lamar Jackson will. Who will have the better career? I don't know about that. I think you're right, though. I think Allen, I'll give the slight edge to having a better season than Lamar Jackson. Can't wait to see. Sharif says pump the brakes. I don't know. We'll see. Dale also says that the Bills have Frank Gore too, and yes, they do. They have the Iron Man. And I say it every year, but maybe this is the year. 39, 48, 30, 56-year-old Frank Gore can't stay healthy and can't keep things going. We did see a little bit of injury creep in on him last year. I think he played his way through it, but eventually Frank Gore's going to lose his effectiveness. I don't think betting on Frank Gore is a great plan, but as a depth guy, I like it. I like this running back room they have between Yeldon, Shady McCoy, Gore, and Singletary now as a young gun. I think this team's okay carrying 4 running backs into the season. If you're going to run the ball as many times as they are, that's perfectly fine with me, especially when your receiver room looks the way it is. You can give up that extra receiver spot on the roster and go give it to a running back. You'd be perfectly fine. Now, John also says he thinks if Josh Allen takes a step forward this year, the Bills could go 9-7, maybe even 10-6, potentially. If they can dominate their division outside of the Patriots, I think this team could be a 9 or a 10 win team. That's going to be the case. How well do you stack up against the Jets? How well do you stack up against the Dolphins? If you can go take all 4 of those games, I think they could do it. And why don't we talk about that? Why don't we talk about where they're at? We'll move into the schedule, and we'll start with the first week. Just like I was saying, you stay in division. What is going to happen against them? Against the Jets, week 1 on the road, because now you're playing in MetLife Stadium out there in New York. This is going to be, I think, too much for the Bills. The first week is going to always be a challenge. You've got the battle of the rookies, Josh Allen versus Sam Darnold. But when you look at things and you look at what this defense for the Jets looks like, as well as what the defense looks like for the Bills, I think as long as Le'Veon Bell is healthy, I'm going to give it to the Jets. I think that's going to be a surprise. It's always interesting to see how you plan for people. Yes, they've played a lot of games against their head coach, whose name I can't think of right now, the dude with the crazy eyes, Adam Gase. They have played a lot of games against Adam Gase, so they're going to have some experience with what he's going to want to do. But I'm willing to bet that Adam Gase is going to have enough new stuff, now having a dominant running back like Le'Veon Bell, that it's going to be difficult for the Bills to keep up with him to begin with. Ian's saying it's a win because he thinks the Jets are in turmoil. It'll be interesting to see. I think this game is a toss-up. I'm going to lean Jets here, not by a lot. Maybe it's my Sam Darnold bias over Josh Allen, but I think, at least on paper, the Jets have a team that's going to be able to compete early in the season with the Bills. You're right. Maybe if this is week 12 and the weather's getting bad and all you can do is run and you got to be a little more one-dimensional, I'd go Bills for the defense and the running game they're going to put up there. But I think if you're able to throw a little bit, Sam Darnold will do a better job of that than Josh Allen does. Scott also says Frank Gore is like the young-looking grandpa who always asks, how old do you think I am? I absolutely agree, man. And he runs like it, too. The guy always seems to be able to put up, I know these past couple years he hadn't got close to 1,000, but he has been an Iron Man, getting at or around 1,000 yards forever. And I'm not going to lie, there's been the past probably 3, 4, 5 years I said his career's over, right? He's ancient. It's time. You don't see 35-year-old running backs, and yet he just keeps rolling. He's the modern-day Warwick Dunn. I think he's absolutely fantastic. I love the pickup, especially because he's probably not costing the Bills too much money. When you have Shady McCoy with the injury history he's had, you can't have enough depth in this running back room. I think that's the perfect move for them to make. We'll move forward, talk about these next couple games, because things start pretty easy for the Bills. If they're going to have that 9 or 10 win season like John had said, I think they need to focus on winning these first few games, because after that, they go on the road to face the Giants, basically staying in the same place. And then they have to go back home and play the Bengals. This is the best probably stretch to get started on the right foot. I think they do. I think they take 2 of these games. I think they're going to win the Giants, and they're going to beat the Bengals here. These are 2 teams that are not very well put together. They do one thing very well, which is play offense, but their defense is atrocious. I think if you let this team run on you, the way the Bills play defense, they should be able to take these wins. Should not be too much of an issue. Now, Scott also says he's not mad at him. He just hopes he's that healthy at that age. I'm with you, Scott. I mean, health-wise, there's not been a healthier guy maybe in sports than Frank Gore has. I mean, I know he had an ACL tear early on with the 49ers, but it doesn't seem to matter what happens to him. He's always in the field. He's always available, and I know Drew is always the health guy. There is something to that. That adds to your value as a player, is always being available. We'll move forward. After that, things get a little bit tougher. Definitely tougher with the Patriots. I'm hoping it's tougher when they go and play the Titans on the road after that. And then they move into a Week 6 bye. A little on the early side, but not terrible. I think when you look at the way things shake out for this Buffalo team, if you go into this 2-1 or maybe even 3-0, it's okay to drop to the Patriots. I think they're going to lose to this Patriots team twice. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Even though the Patriots don't always start strong, maybe this is your chance here in Week 4. You got to give it to them, right? I mean, Tom Brady, you look at everything they've got. I mean, they got Cameron Meredith now. Who's going to beat them? I think when you look at the Patriots, they'll just have whatever scheme it's going to take to beat the Bills. I don't know who it's going to be. It might be Rex Burkhead. It might be Sony Michel. It might be Julian Edelman. They're going to have one guy go wild, find a way to find that chink in the armor, of the Buffalo Bills and find a way to score points against them, you can't count on the defense. It comes down to, can you keep up with the Patriots with the scoring? I like that the Bills run the ball. I like that they try to keep Tom Brady on the sideline, but if you're not able to throw a little bit in these clutch situations, you're not going to beat a team like New England. It's just not going to happen. Now, Ian says, win and win. Can you start with 3 worst teams in the league? Instead of the Jets, they probably could have played Tampa. But yeah, I'm with you on that, Ian. We're just missing the trifecta, the Giants, Buccaneers. Maybe you could say Raiders. I don't know. I think the Raiders have a good offense too. Or at the very least, they have the makings of a good offense. We'll see how dysfunctional that gets. Moving forward, we'll talk about Week 5. On the road against Tennessee. These are 2 teams that are going to be playing physically. Hopefully by now, Taylor Lewan is back and in his swing. For the Tennessee Titans, I think Tennessee's going to be able to run the ball enough on Buffalo. You're going to see, whether it's Dion Lewis or Derrick Henry, they're going to have a little bit of success. I'm not sure which one of those guys is going to need to be. It might be one of the games where Derrick Henry goes wild and you just keep handing him the rock. It might be a game where Dion Lewis needs to be utilized out of the backfield. As long as the Titans come out and play the defense they can play, they can beat them. Even last year when they lost to the Bills, it was almost a comedy of errors where Buffalo kept making mistakes, kept trying to get the Titans back into the game from dropped interceptions that would have been a pick six, from fumbled field goals that should have ended terribly. The Bills are a team that, even though they're trying to do the same thing the Titans are, I don't think they're as far along in the development. I'd still take the Titans defense, and I know everyone's going to say, why? Come on, the Bills were second last year in defense. They're also 18th in scoring. The Titans were like 6th in scoring and 3rd overall. So I would take the Titans defense. I think they're one of the defenses that, as long as everyone stays healthy and as long as they're getting enough out of their pass rush, should be able to frustrate Josh Allen and keep him in check. They got a lot of athleticism. They got Kevin Byard back there who's going to be able to maybe contain some of these Josh Allen runs. They have athletic young linebackers in Rashad Evans and Jayon Brown, both very, very quick, both very agile guys that should be able to slow down Josh Allen a little bit. Wesley Woodyard's a good leader as well. We'll see. I'm not 100% in this game. Again, this is the kind of game the Titans lose. For right now, I got to pick them on paper. Going back to the comments here, Jeremy says ESPN predicted the Bears to win 9 games, and he believes it will be more than that. I think you're right, Jeremy. I think 9 is way low. I think we picked the Bears to win 12. We do have a full episode on it. Didn't mean to spoil it for you. If you want to click on our video tab, we do, like for every team, we break them all the way out if you want to watch that. I think the Bears are winning more than 9 games. That division's going to be tough. Detroit's getting better. The Vikings should be better than what we saw last year. And then on top of it, Green Bay's trying to buy a new defense. This is going to be a tough division. Potentially they slip, but I think it's 10 games minimum for this team, or you're talking about a massive failure. I don't see them taking that big of a step back unless they have an injury. Maybe Trubisky goes down. We can talk about it then. Right now, on paper, the Bears are a top 5 team for me. Maybe top 7 at worst. They're one of those teams that should absolutely be talked about winning a Super Bowl, not winning 9 games like ESPN said. Moving forward, though, Week 6 bye. It's early. You got a long stretch after that. I'm not crazy about it, but I think this is what happens when you're not a playoff team. Usually you get punished with some of these bad byes and these bad schedules. But who knows? Maybe they steal a game against the Titans. Maybe they steal a few of these games early, and we're talking about Buffalo going into this 4-1, 5-0, even if they pull off some magic against the Patriots. I don't see it, but it could happen. After that, you get the Dolphins at home. And again, if you can dominate this division, the Bills could have a chance to be a playoff team. We see them beating this team. This is one of the teams that, even though they're in division and things usually get a little chippy between them, I think the Dolphins are just absolutely depleted. I know Brian Flores is supposed to be the defensive guy that maybe can bring in a little bit of a scheme to frustrate Josh Allen. I just don't see it, man. I got to be honest with you. They don't have the offense. Josh Rosen might be quarterback. It might be Ryan Fitzpatrick making mistakes for him. Miami just does not have the firepower it's going to take to beat a team like Buffalo that should be able to run on them too. Even though Miami's defense isn't the worst in the world, I think Buffalo will have a little bit of success on the ground. Josh Allen, hopefully, again, we see more passing than rushing. But even if he's got to do it with his legs, this is a game they can definitely win. Let me take a sip because I am parched. It's hard going on like this. It's been 45 minutes, guys. Cut me a break. All right, Week 8 and on. We'll talk about 2 games where they're going to play the NFC East. They get the Eagles and the Redskins both at home. I see this as a double loss. This is going to be really, really difficult. I think after coming off a team like the Dolphins, the Eagles is going to be, the exact opposite of what you can see. I think the Eagles are, with them bringing in Cyprien to now back them up, like I said, the rich got richer earlier in the show. The Eagles are going to be a very, very difficult team. That front four is not only going to be after Josh Allen, they're going to be causing havoc on this, mercenary offensive line the Bills have. They're brought in 6 players to rotate on this offensive line. Maybe 4 or 5 of them wind up starting. They're going to have a lot of learning to do going up against a defensive line like the Eagles have that might be the best in football, second or third, probably at worst. We're talking about an absolute struggle for a unit that's not going to be ready for it. Josh Allen's going to be under duress. Maybe he throws a little bit better because the Eagles, outside of Ronald Darby, I don't think they're a particularly great secondary. But I still think that the Eagles are going to have too much for him. I think you look beyond the defense, their offense shouldn't have too much trouble getting things done. They now have Jordan Howard who's going to be able to pound the rock against them. They have a great offensive line. They have receivers now as well. They have Arcega-Whiteside and Alshon Jeffrey, both huge receivers. They're going to be able to make an impact. If you don't know, Arcega-Whiteside is a rookie. He's like probably the best go up and get it receiver in this draft. They're going to be able to go play physically dominating football against a Bills defense that, even though I respect them, I think they'll hang on for a while. They were still 18th in scoring. I don't think they keep Philly off the board forever. Going on to the Redskins, I think this is just fatigue. I think these are two teams that, again, kind of like the Titans, just want to run the ball, want to play defense, want to win the physical battle. They want to win in the trenches. They want to play bully ball. I think the Redskins on defense are just as formidable as the Bills are. I think on offense, it depends who starts. If this is Dwayne Haskins playing, and Dwayne Haskins doesn't have the start that we want to see out of a rookie quarterback, the Bills could win here. You've got the experience at that point. Even if it's Case Keenum, there's a chance that he has a fall apart game. But I think when you look at things on paper, when you look at the running backs that the Redskins have, eventually, just like the Eagles, they're going to find a way to wear down the Bills' defense, and eventually they're going to score a few points. They're not going to be lighting it up. This might be a 14-12 game where we've seen all kinds of field goals kicked by one team and a couple touchdowns by the other. I think this is going to be a really tough game. I think this could go either way, but I think either way, both teams need to get out of this healthy. This is going to be a smash and grab game where if you get out healthy, maybe that's what helps your season along, especially if the Bills have as hot of a start like we think they can. Now, Ian says he thinks they beat Washington. The Washington defense will be broken down at this point. Potentially, but that was the unit that stayed good, right? I mean, usually it's this offensive line that's got a bunch of injuries. Even despite the injuries on defense, they found a way to stay relevant. They found a way to stay pretty effective towards the end of last year. Maybe not as good as they were at the beginning of the year, but they stuck with it, even despite injury. I think as long as they've got a couple guys like Landon Collins healthy in this defense, they're going to have at least a little bit of pop on the Redskins side of the ball. Going forward here, things don't get a lot easier when they go on the road to face the Browns, but after that, they go and play the Dolphins again on the road, and then the Broncos shortly after that. Again, I think the losing streak continues. I think this is another stretch where the cumulative fatigue of your defense being beaten on week in and week out just starts to wear down a team like Buffalo that probably is not quite as good as some of these other playoff teams are. I think on top of it, too, some of these offensive linemen that have struggled in the past might go back to those struggling ways. I mean, maybe Nsekhe's not as good as they thought he could be, or he's not as consistent as they want him to be. Same thing with Quentin Spain. Maybe these guys aren't as solid as the money would suggest they be. I think going forward, the Browns, I'm not ready to crown them the Super Bowl champions, but this offense is going to be hard to keep off the board all game long. They're going to be able to run as well with both Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt coming out of that backfield, assuming they're both healthy at this point. I think the Browns are the clear favorite here. This might be the game Buffalo steals, though. I think this is a game where they could absolutely steal a win here. I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but I think you need to watch out. It's one of those games that you can't overlook if you're a Browns fan, just because Buffalo may not have the record that's going to keep them competitive here. Dolphins, just like before, I think this is one of those teams that's going to be good enough to steal another win against Buffalo. I don't see Buffalo being good enough to take both in the series, in division. I see them losing in Week 11 on the road and winning in Week 7. We'll move forward and talk about the Broncos next. Again, two teams that want to run and play physical defense. I think a lot of this depends on who comes into this game healthy. If you get any kind of healthy team in with the Broncos, with guys like Bradley Chubb and Von Miller coming after Josh Allen, I gotta make them the favorite. I just have to do it. Even though I think the Bills will have some success on the ground, even though I think the Bills will still put up a great defense. Phillip Lindsay's not a slouch. Rolls-Royce might be a good running back as well. I think this is another knockdown, drag-out fight, but when you've gone through so many of them like they have, I'm going to call it another loss. After that, I think eventually the Bills bounce back when they go on the road to face the Cowboys. And I know what you're saying. I just gave them the Broncos. I just gave up the Browns. I just said the Redskins could beat them. Why the Cowboys, who want to do the same thing as the Bills do, which is play defense, run the ball first? Why do I see that as being the difference? Dak Prescott. I think if the Bills have the defense still working, if the defense is still playing close to elite, they're going to be able to stay in this game for the simple fact of this defense might be able to frustrate someone like Dak Prescott. I think if they can contain Zeke Elliott, keep him from just winning this game single-handedly, and put this on Dak Prescott to try to beat them, not to mention Cole Beasley's playing in a revenge game, this is a game Buffalo can win. This is one of those surprise games that they're going to upset a good team, even though they're not going to have a great season themselves. They're going to upset a great team and maybe keep them from winning the NFC, maybe keep them from winning their division. I think this is one of those games that the Cowboys, more than anyone else, more than anyone we even talked about on this schedule coming up here these past few weeks, need to not overlook things. If they overlook the Buffalo Bills, they are going to struggle with a team built this way. Also, we'll move forward. We'll talk about these last few weeks because, again, as easy as this schedule started, it ends very, very difficultly. Let's talk about the Ravens in 14, and then we'll talk Steelers on the road and 15, Patriots 16 on the road, and you close out with the Jets. This is going to be difficult, man. This is one of those stretches that separate the men from the boys. Again, if you come away with a couple of these wins, and I think Buffalo might, I think they're going to be able to challenge the Ravens. Just like the Cowboys, these teams are going to be all kind of in the hunt for the playoffs. I think the Bills, with their defense, their running game, are going to frustrate a team like the Ravens that might be one-dimensional at this point in the season. If they've lost a receiver or two, or Lamar Jackson has not had a lot of success, they might just lean on the running game and say, we're going to win 15-10. I think the Ravens, more than anyone, are the matchup that the Bills are set up to beat. They're going to focus in on the run. They're going to be able to contain Lamar Jackson a little bit. And then you just have to worry about breaking into the defense. I think both of them are good, but I think the Ravens have lost some pieces. I think the Bills might be the better defense, even than the Ravens next year. I know, blasphemy to say, because we always bet on the Ravens not being that good. I think the Ravens might take a small step back on defense, and that might be the difference in this game. One more quick sip, and then I promise we'll move on. All right. Week 15. Ian, I know you're liking that I said that they're going to beat the Ravens. I think they're going to beat the Steelers too. I think they're going to shock this NFC North, or this AFC North, and go on a winning streak here. I think they're going to be able to beat the Steelers even on the road at Heinz Field because they're able to play dirty football. They're able to play really good defense. They might frustrate some of these receivers. If they still had Antonio Brown, I'd say this is Steelers all the way. But I think when you're able to focus in on Juju Smith-Schuster, unless we see that other receiver emerge that is going to be able to make up for all the attention that they're going to be giving to Juju, I think the Steelers are going to be one-dimensional as well, and James Conner is not going to have what it takes to beat this Bills defense. I think James Conner is going to be one of those guys that is able to make or break this game for the Steelers. If he can go out, and whether he does it catching, whether he does it running, if he can be the impactful second guy, and he can be healthy, and we see the best of James Conner, the Steelers can win. I think this is going to be a struggle for them, though, because I think the Bills are going to be able to take him out of this game. Going to the comments again, Ian says the Steelers' defense picks them apart. Maybe, potentially, could be. Again, this is where the Steelers are best, right? In the front seven. Their secondary might have some question marks with guys like Steven Nelson coming in. I think if we see a progression for Josh Allen, again, it's going to be what the Bills want to see. It's going to be in games like this where we start to see some of the flashes with a defense like the Steelers. I mean, maybe they lose this game and Josh Allen goes and throws for 280 yards and we see some impressive passes into tight windows and he finds a way to get things done. If that happens, I'm going to call it a win. Ian's also saying he's taking Steelers 21-7. I think this might be 23-20 Buffalo, where it's a good game. The Bills hang around in there, and then they just wear down the Steelers' defense because they're pounding the rock, pounding the rock, pounding the rock. Maybe this is the Frank Gore game where he comes out and he makes the difference because he goes and puts up that 89 yards and 2 touchdowns that the Buffalo Bills needed to win the game. I like the Steelers. I still think they're going to be a very, very interesting team this year. I think they might even be one of the best ones in that division, and everyone's sleeping on them. But I think they lose to Buffalo because these are the teams that play really, really good defense. With this Steelers offense having some questions, I can't bet on them yet. I can't do it. Not until I see Juju step up and be that true number one guy, and not until I see that number two guy emerge in the passing game. If they had that, I'd go Steelers. Since they don't, I gotta say, I think the Bills pull a surprise here as well. Week 16, Patriots on the road. Another big fat L for Buffalo. I know Buffalo fans are gonna say, but we play them tough sometimes. I know, I get it. But this is probably a Patriots team that needs to win to keep home field against teams like the Chargers and the Chiefs. I think they're going to be 100%, especially after last year, looking at that playoff game and how close it was out there in Kansas City. They're going to be 100% motivated towards the end of the season to close out strong. I think they're going to find whatever it takes to frustrate this Bills team. Finally, Jets, just like week 1, they play in week 17. This time it's at home. I think the Bills are going to find a way to split with them. I think it's going to be the win at home in 17, lose on the road week 1. By then, they get this win. Is it going to be good enough to get them into the playoffs? No. We see them finishing 7-9. We see them slightly better than last year with the additions to some of these wide receivers. But I still don't think Buffalo is there yet. We need to see more out of this quarterback. We need to see more out of the passing game. We need to see more out of the receivers. It's the whole package when it comes to throwing the ball. Everybody needs to be better. From the guy throwing it, to the guys catching it, to the guys even calling the plays. We need to see more creative stuff out of Buffalo. We need to see better execution. We need to see better receiving. And we need to see better passing. If we don't see that, and Josh Allen kind of stagnates again, even if he's making plays with his legs and you're winning 4, 5, 6 games like that, I think it's time for Buffalo to take a hard look in the mirror and say, what are we trying to build here? And can we just stack out this defense enough? I mean, we were second. You're not getting much better, right? Not that much better. Maybe you keep the scoring down lower this year, but you were still the second-rated defense in the NFL last year, and it won you 6 games. I think they need to focus on what can Josh Allen be, and did we bet on the right horse taking him in this draft? Because if the answer is no, it's still, I get it, really early to give up on a guy, but maybe you need to be keeping your eyes open. Maybe there's another quarterback that comes available, like a Joe Flacco-level player. It could be the Titans quarterback. This could be Marcus Mariota, that he comes available and you say that's that slight difference better, even though I don't necessarily believe at this point that he is that much better. Maybe they see that as that step forward where they can move forward and get somebody else. I think the Bills have a very, very difficult question coming up, because if this guy is making those impact plays with his legs, the fans aren't going to want to see him leave, but ultimately your goal needs to be to win Super Bowls. I just don't know that they have that. All right, guys. It was a fun show. That's going to do it for the Buffalo Bills. Again, this is still a team with questions. This is still a team that went out and tried to buy everybody in free agency, and we don't see that always work out. But I think it's still a team with upside. I think their defense sticking together is going to be really important. I think they drafted well with Ed Oliver coming in. Cody Ford, I think, was a good right tackle coming in as well. I think when you look at this team, you're probably talking about 7-9 wins at best. There's a potential things go off the rails, and we're talking about another 5 or 6 win season. But I think alone with the defense, they're going to win 4, 5, 6 games. I think on that side of the ball, they're going to be in these games, and they're going to find a way to luck themselves into at least a few of them. The question is, what do they have to do to get that next step forward? And I don't see an easy answer, because it's too early to give up on Josh Allen. You don't want to just kick this kid to the curb, but if we don't see any progression with the passing game, eventually you're going to need to figure out what comes next. So I think that's going to do it, guys. Again, I don't have a ton of special thanks. I know guys like Ian, and I saw you, Matthew. Jeremy was here. Sharif was always here as always. We appreciate all of that. It was a great show. I had fun. Again, I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing me talk, but I appreciate you sticking with me this long. Absolutely fun. Can't wait to have Drew back in the studio on Monday. Until then, I hope you have a great weekend. I know I will. I'm planning on drinking a few beers myself. I will see you guys back on Monday, where we are talking about another NFL team. It might even be the Chiefs. You might want to tune in to watch Drew complain about me not letting his Chiefs win 16 games. We'll let him defend them, though, when he's here. So for Sports Around the Bar, I'm Jake, your bartender. I can't wait to talk to you guys again on Monday.